Hi, Austin, Texas. It is time for your housing update for the week of July the 20th. Let's dig in. So, as of Monday, there were 7,452 homes for sale in Austin, Texas, which is actually down from our highest inventory number of the year last week when we had 515 more homes available. There are 1,413 new listings that came on the market, which is 58 more homes than last week. There are 2,083 home price decreases and 213 home increases versus 146 last week. So there are so many things that are going on, but a lot of things are up from last week and some things are down. So let's keep going. There are 611 properties that went under contract, which is up from the week prior. There are 545 pending properties for sale, also up from last week. And we saw 772 homes versus last week. There were 18 less houses that were kind of teetering. 218 houses were taken off the market. 35 homes had listings that expired, and 128 homes are now actually on hold. So, you may be asking yourself, Jennifer, what does all of this mean if you're a seller? Well, given the inventory numbers are hovering at about the 7,000 mark, sellers are finding more competition in most price points, as well as price for move-in ready is still killing it out there. We have more inventory than we did months ago, and people aren't looking for the perfect house, but they're looking for a really great house, which means if your house is for sale ready, you are going to do better at the negotiating table, and that's what matters if you're a seller. So, how is your home being marketed? That's a big question, because as I've said before, as I've said a million times, marketing is not about putting your house on the MLS, putting a sign in the yard, and praying for a decent offer. So Austin, just so you know, aspirational sales prices based on what houses sold for even 30 days ago is no longer a strong comparable when you are thinking about the price point for listing your homes. The market has shifted, and with the increased lending rates, Austin is still very much a seller's market, sellers. However, buyers are starting to have some demands. And here's the other thing. With 513 homes showing up more so than we have in quite some time, well, actually down so than quite some time, lumber prices are coming down. Who knows what future costs are going to be, but builders are no longer being able to get away with gouging the market. Amen to that. Woo woo! So, there's some things to think about, sellers. Buyers, what does it mean, this market, if you are a buyer? Well, what you need to know is that it continues to be a hot seller's market. Buyers, you're going to find that you want to work with your approved lender who may be actually offering you less money because of the interest rates being what they are. But you know what? That's the way the cookie crumbles, as they say. Right now, it's more competitive than ever, and FHA buyers are actually getting a crack at the whip, which is exciting if that is part of your buying strategy. In the build to rent area, we are seeing huge growth by design, and people are making a lot of money in that space because people feel that there's pressure on the economy. Our property taxes are very real in Austin, and people are in these high equity positions and are trying to capitalize. So real estate has always been the most stable wealth building opportunity for Americans, and that does not change. Home ownership is part of budgeting, and it always will be. Developers that are 30 to 45 minutes away are building all sorts of build to rent, and our city is benefiting from the taxes one way or another because they're either getting them from the builders and the developers, or they're getting them from homeowners. And rents are on the increase, so watch out for that. if you're waiting for housing prices to come down, prices are going to slowly increase. We are not going to drop below anything that we've seen in quite some time. So while you may benefit, buyer, from a slight decrease in the next little while, the increase in mortgage rates may not cancel that out. And 5 years from now, odds are that any house you buy today is going to be worth more in 5 years than it is. And you're buying your home for the long term. If you're looking to flip it and get out quick, different discussion. But if you are buying your home as a homestead, you're better off lowering your taxable income and all of the good things associated with home ownership and building equity. Can I get an amen? All right. So what does it mean? Are we going to remain steady? Are we going to grow slowly? Time will tell. Here's what else we're seeing. We're seeing news of lending companies closing. Yeah, I know I talked about it last week. And you know what? The companies that announced those closings and layoffs, again, they were either the smartest or dumbest business model on the planet because they were there to capitalize on refinancing, which we all know couldn't continue. Not possible. So here's the thing. Looking at the bigger picture, I'm not an economist. I'm a realtor. However, my basic understanding, when we start to look at the national debt, we look at the total amount owed by the United States, we look at the fact that we've increased rates and spending like by 35% in the last 2 years. The GDP is all over the place. And when we're looking at the services that we are producing in our country, that is used to measure our economic output, are we growing or are we not growing? And people are either spending more money or they're not spending more money. So here's the thing. We're seeing less supply chain issues now, and we're still experiencing labor shortages to get those darn supplies off the containers. So that's going on. The stimulus was great while it lasted, but that's so like 2 years ago, and now we're paying for it. U.S. is currently raising interest rates, as we all know, and it's raising it faster than other countries. And given that we are considered a safe haven asset, it means that globally, during any economic uncertainty, the U.S. is always a good place to park extra cash. Other countries may be looking to even try to pay down their loan as quickly as possible to lower the total amount owed. However, as my little economics lesson continues, they can only pay so fast. So inflation is continuing to make their dollar weaker. And honestly, this all gets beyond me, but the national debt being an issue, could it be? Depends who you talk to. Demand being slow, demand being high, our economy is getting worse because the media, aka the news, designed to sell ratings, not tell truth, but sell ratings, the media is helping ensure that with enough scaring, they are trying to fulfill the prophecy. And 2 years ago, shouting health concerns, now it's economics concerns. And you know what? If it bleeds, it leads. So what we believe is what we perceive. So gas prices just dropped a little bit this week. I want to throw that out there. Doubt, honestly, I expect that they'll rise again. I doubt, honestly, that they'll stay, but it is what it is. So that was a nice little break today at the pumps. So where my true knowledge and skill is, now that I've ranted the little bit of economics that I know, is in navigating the waters of buying and selling houses. So I'm not going to pretend to stick my head out any further and that I know anything about the economic forefront. But our economy truly begins at home, and we vote with our wallets. So right now there is a shift in people's 401ks, in crypto, and what we are holding. The market's volatility is expected to continue. Okay, a couple more things. I'm not kidding. But I'll be off this in a second. The thing is, I owe it to myself and I owe it to you to follow these global economic considerations because that affects our microeconomic buying and selling power here in Austin, Texas. Our tax rates, those are going to be coming out soon. We're only a few months away from that. And folks, if our taxes stay exactly the same as they were last year, given the value increases in our properties, and even with a homestead cap exemption of 10%, taxes are still going to be up because our home values are higher. So don't forget this fall to protest your taxes, and I will talk about more of that later. Yeah, not now. So here's the thing. If the value of your home in January and February was higher than it is when taxes come out, it doesn't matter because we're getting taxed on the increase of our homes based on when the data was pulled. Just an FYI, so sweep money for your tax bill. So as a realtor, my job, really when all is said and done, is to get your offer accepted, whether you are a buyer or a seller. And we're not going to be at 4, 5, 6, 7 months of inventory anytime soon. We're in July. Come November, people will start to drop things because it is the winter. So just work with me here for a second. Agents work for their buyers. Agents work for their sellers. Listing agents represent the seller. They cannot represent you if you're a buyer. That's called dual agency. It's illegal here. We don't do that. Buyers are clients. Listing agents have buyer clients. That means if you roll up to them and ask them for a deal, they're not working for you. You want someone who works for you. You want to be someone's client. You want the terms that are best for you when you go to buy a house. Sellers are working with their listing agent. Builders are working for themselves. That's right. Do you think they want to get a house under contract and get to the closing table? Well, they do. So imagine that. In case you didn't catch it, builders also represent their own best interest. The builder isn't interested in anything but getting a contract. So do you really think they're going to negotiate the best possible terms for an unrepresented buyer if you walk in there because you're nice? Hello, McFly. Hello. So that said, builders, you know what? Some of them are starting to offer builder incentives again. So that's kind of cool. Maybe the builder isn't gouging buyers in that train is over, but who's to say? The thing is, there's still a limited amount of inventory with construction, and honestly, for people who were being taken advantage of in the past with all the crazy things going on, more builders than not have got some black eyes in our community, and builders are now asking realtors to come in for events and promote new construction properties, and it's a shift. But the fact is they're singing from a different hymn sheet than they were a few months ago, and you know what? They're going to be hard of hearing because they've done a job on the industry. So the other thing to consider with builders right now, if you are looking at new builds, is builders will recommend their own lending companies because they get paid when you use their company. But those companies really aren't interested in you reading the fine print. They may or may not be getting certain deals from the builder and vice versa. And what happens when you have two key people on your buying team who are working for themselves, the lender and the builder? Do you think they're helping you with the biggest purchase of your life, folks? Do you think they're helping you with the strategic options for your borrowing? Well, here's the thing. I get my buyers with top lenders who are there for you, clients who they will go above and beyond for, because any possible mortgage terms that will serve you today and for years to come is what we're interested in. And so what I get to experience there is not my pocketbook lined. I get to experience knowing that whether you're escrowing your taxes or not, that you have been educated, that you have been cared for during the home buying process, and that lets me sleep at night. So, today's rant, that was a good one. The long and the short of it is that there are opportunities right now for buyers, and there are opportunities right now for sellers with interest rates and with home sales. Will we see a 6% rate this year? I think so. We're not that far off. So the thing is, if you are considering buying or selling in Austin, do your homework, ask questions, and next week we will take another look at the market update, and I'll tell you more. I would love to hear your thoughts in the meantime about what you're experiencing. What are your thoughts on the economy? How are you living, loving, working, and playing in Austin, Texas? Please comment below. I would love to hear from you. I'm Jennifer S. Goodman, living in Austin, Texas. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.